his phone connected to her iPad at 2:47 in the morning. She never knew. A judge called it one of the most cold-blooded murders he had ever seen. The jury needed 1 hour, but the violence started long before the night she died. Her 4-year-old daughter slept in the next room. Her roommate dozed on the couch. 3 dogs lay quietly in the apartment. And somewhere in the darkness of that October night, a man who had told her he loved her, who had promised her a future, a home, a family, pulled himself onto her second-floor balcony. He had been watching her for 3 days, sitting on a bench near her apartment complex, searching for floor plans of her unit online, tracking her movements, changing into all black at a nearby gas station as the sun went down. 3 minutes before her roommate, Piercy, found her body. He typed North Carolina into his GPS. 3 minutes. That's how confident he was that no one would ever know he had been there. But here's what makes this case worth examining. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a man who snapped in a moment of rage. The evidence would reveal something far more disturbing. A methodical hunt. A predator whose entire identity had been exposed as a fabrication, and who decided that if he couldn't have her, he would make sure no one could. The question isn't just what happened to Katlyn Lyon Montgomery. The question is why. What transforms a rejected ex-boyfriend into a killer who executes his crime with military precision? What makes a man stalk his former partner for days, research her apartment layout, dress like a ninja, a term he later used himself in court, and attack while her child sleeps nearby? The answer lies in understanding what happens when a carefully constructed lie collapses, and the person behind that lie cannot tolerate being seen for who they truly are. Intent is what separates accident from murder, passion from premeditation, justice from revenge. It is not the act itself, but the intent behind it that makes it a crime. I'm Carmen Carrion, and this is Deadly Intent, a true crime podcast that goes beyond the who and the what to examine the why, because understanding criminal intent isn't just academic. It's how we recognize danger. It's how we protect ourselves and the people we love. And sometimes it's the only way we can make sense of senseless violence. Today we're examining a case that has recently captured national attention, the murder of Katlyn Lyon Montgomery. While other coverage has focused on the investigation and the trial, we're going to do something different. We're going to examine the psychology behind this killing. We're going to analyze the behavioral patterns that preceded it. And we're going to understand why this case represents a tragically common scenario. The post-breakup murder committed by an intimate partner whose constructed identity has been exposed. This is the story of a dancing queen, a devoted mother, and a woman who had made the courageous decision to leave a man she had discovered was living a lie. It's the story of what that man did when his fantasy crumbled. And it's a case study in the most dangerous period in any abusive relationship, the moment of separation. Katlyn Lyon Montgomery was 28 years old in the fall of 2022. To know her, according to everyone who loved her, was to know light. She was a mother first, devoted to her 4-year-old daughter, Milani. She was a sister, a niece, a cousin, a friend. She was someone who believed in love and unity, who never met a stranger, who went out of her way to help anyone who needed it. Her family called her their dancing queen because of her passion for electronic dance music and the way she could command any dance floor she stepped onto. She would draw a crowd, her brother Jake Lyon remembered. There was this energy about her, this social magnetism that pulled people in. She expressed herself through her hair, always changing colors, experimenting with new styles. Purple was her favorite. When she walked into a room, you noticed. When she left, you remembered. She loved music festivals and travel. She was the family's mac and cheese connoisseur. Rarely did anyone see her without an iced coffee in her hand. The last words she wrote in her personal journal were simple and profound. I am loved. She knew she was loved. That's the comfort her family holds on to. In early 2022, Katlyn was living in Forest, Virginia. a small, census-designated place near Lynchburg, and she was ready for the next chapter of her life. She was looking for a partner, someone stable, someone who could be a father figure to Milani, someone she could build a future with. In January 2022, she met Trenton Fry on a dating app. He seemed perfect. Fry, who was also 28 at the time, presented himself as a successful businessman from Greensboro, North Carolina. He talked about companies he ran, businesses he owned. He was charming, attentive, and seemed completely smitten with Katlyn. He fit the profile of exactly what she was looking for. But something about Trenton Fry never quite added up. Katlyn's friend Hannah McDowell noticed it first. Fry lived 3 hours away in North Carolina, yet he seemed to spend weeks at a time at Katlyn's apartment. If he was running multiple businesses, how could he be on the couch every time Hannah came home? When I would leave in the morning, when I would come home from lunch, when I would get home from work, he would always just be on the couch, Hannah recalled. And then there was the change in Katlyn herself. The vibrant woman who loved to dance and socialize became quiet, isolated. She wasn't going out as much. She wasn't seeing her friends. I feel like she was chained to him almost, Hannah said. Fry tracked Katlyn's location on her phone. He was always there, always watching. By summer 2022, the relationship had progressed to discussions of moving in together. Fry offered to find them an apartment in North Carolina. They could start fresh, build a life, become a family. And then, in early September 2022, everything fell apart. Fry confessed he couldn't find an apartment. He couldn't qualify. He didn't have the credit. He didn't have a stable source of income. Katlyn called her Aunt Sherry Cox from work, hysterical. She was screaming, bawling. Sherry remembered. She was like, "He's a liar. He lied about everything. He doesn't have a job. That's not his car he's driving. He's driving his mom's car. He's living in his car. He doesn't have a place." The successful businessman with multiple companies, he was a fiction, a carefully constructed facade designed to attract and secure a woman like Katlyn. Her brother Jake later described the realization. She realized that he was kind of a con artist. He always talked a big game about how successful he was and all of his companies that he ran or owned. He didn't have anything going for him. Katlyn did what so many domestic violence advocates advise. She ended the relationship. She cut ties. She blocked his number. She tried to move on. In late September 2022, she moved into a new apartment with a new roommate, Jacob Piercy, whom she had met at work. It was a fresh start, a new chapter. Trenton Fry's phone records would later show that just 10 days after the breakup, he began driving from North Carolina to Virginia. He wasn't coming to win her back. He was coming to watch. October 4th, 2022. Trenton Fry's cell phone begins pinging off towers in Virginia, 3 days before Katlyn's murder. He's not supposed to be there. He has no reason to be there. But digital records don't lie. He wasn't in North Carolina working an overnight shift. He was in Virginia. Specifically, he was in the vicinity of Katlyn's new apartment complex in Forest. October 6th, 2022. A neighbor at the apartment complex notices something unsettling. There's a man sitting at a picnic table on a small hill near the buildings. He's been there for hours, just sitting, watching. The neighbor finds him so disturbing that she takes a photograph. When investigators later examine that image, they identify the man as Trenton Fry. It felt just a little odd, the neighbor would testify. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and as I got closer, that individual looked at me as if we were going to speak, and I felt fear. That same afternoon, around the time the photo was taken, Fry texted Katlyn's Aunt Sherry. He wanted to know if she still wanted him to finish her floors, a project he had apparently promised to do while he was still with Katlyn. Sherry didn't respond. Instead, she immediately called Katlyn. Katlyn unblocked Fry's number just long enough to send him a message. "Do not call my aunt anymore." This initiated a heated text exchange. Fry made it clear he knew where Katlyn was living. He knew she was staying with Jacob Piercy, and he didn't like it. The text turned vicious. Fry called Katlyn a low-life piece of shit. He told her karma is a bitch. But there were other messages too. Messages that would later paint a picture of a man in psychological crisis, or at least one who wanted to appear that way. "My mental issues are getting out of control," he texted her. "I'm tearing myself apart, hurting like I never have before." That evening, surveillance cameras at a Sheetz gas station near the apartment complex captured Fry's SUV pulling in. When he emerged from the store, he was wearing all black. Jacob Piercy would later testify that Katlyn called him that night, sounding frightened. October 6 to 7, 2022. Cell phone forensics reveal that Fry was in the immediate area of Katlyn's apartment for hours. His phone communicated with towers within 1 mile of her address. Text records show continued arguing between them about the breakup throughout the night and into the early morning hours of October 7th. And then, at approximately 2:47 a.m., Fry's phone briefly connected to the Bluetooth on Katlyn's iPad, which was inside her apartment. Prosecutors would later theorize that Fry used a bench, which was found discarded in the weeds behind Katlyn's building, to boost himself onto a 4-foot wall, then pulled himself up onto her second-floor balcony. He entered the apartment while Katlyn slept, while her 4-year-old daughter slept in another room, while her roommate dozed on the couch, while 3 dogs lay quiet. He didn't make a sound. Investigators would find a phone charging cord adapter wrapped in Katlyn's comforter. The ligature marks on her neck were consistent with strangulation by such a cord. At approximately 5 a.m., 4-year-old Milani woke and went to her mother's room. Something was wrong with Mommy. She couldn't wake her up. Milani found Jacob Piercy and told him. Piercy discovered Katlyn on her bed, unresponsive, lights on, covers off. He called 911. The dispatcher walked him through CPR. He performed chest compressions until first responders arrived. When paramedics reached the scene, they initially suspected a drug overdose. There was no obvious sign of trauma, no broken windows or doors, no evidence of forced entry. Katlyn was transported to Lynchburg General Hospital in grave condition. 3 minutes before Piercy found her, at approximately 4:57 a.m., Trenton Fry had typed North Carolina into his GPS. He later claimed he was driving back to his home state when he got a bad feeling about 20 minutes down the road. He turned around. He drove back to the apartment complex, and according to his own testimony, he watched from a distance as first responders tried to save Katlyn's life. Cell phone data placed him hiding in the bushes near the complex as paramedics worked. Then he drove away. Katlyn was declared brain dead at 10 a.m. on October 8, 2022. She was 28 years old. Her final act of love was becoming an organ donor, fulfilling wishes she had documented long before. Her Aunt Tina filmed the moment hospital staff escorted Katlyn to honor that commitment, sharing the video on TikTok as part of what would become a viral campaign for justice. The investigation initially focused on Jacob Piercy. He was the only other adult in the apartment. There was no sign of forced entry. Investigators looked at him pretty heavy, according to lead investigator Robbie Burnett. But Piercy was cooperative. He handed over his phone. He agreed to multiple interviews. He allowed his body to be photographed for defensive wounds. And critically, the 911 recording capturing him performing CPR and desperately trying to save Katlyn's life. Within days, investigators learned about Trenton Fry. They learned about the recent breakup. They learned about the angry text messages. They pulled his phone records, and what they found was damning. Fry's phone data placed him in Virginia, not North Carolina, for days before the murder. It placed him in the immediate vicinity of Katlyn's apartment on the night of her death. His phone had briefly connected to her iPad in the early morning hours. He had searched for floor plans of her apartment complex online. He had searched for breaking news about her death before police had ever announced that a crime had occurred. When investigators first contacted Fry, he lied. He claimed he had been in North Carolina, working an overnight shift. His employer contradicted this. He claimed he didn't even know where Katlyn lived. His phone data said otherwise. He claimed he had blacked out and couldn't remember the days surrounding her death. Yet when shown the evidence against him, he allegedly said, "If I did hurt her or kill her, that's horrible." On October 20th, 2022, 12 days after Katlyn's death, Trenton Fry was arrested in Greensboro, North Carolina, and charged with murder. He was eventually extradited to Virginia. Prosecutors later upgraded the charge to first-degree murder, arguing that the killing was premeditated. The evidence of stalking, the surveillance, the preparation, the all-black clothing, the researched floor plans, all pointed to a calculated execution, not a crime of passion. Fry's trial began on March 31, 2025. After multiple delays, he maintained his innocence, with his defense attorney arguing there was no physical evidence placing him inside the apartment. There's no evidence, no hard evidence, nothing you can point to prove that Trenton was ever in that apartment, Attorney Joseph Sansoni argued. But Fry made a surprising decision. He took the stand in his own defense, and in doing so, he gave prosecutors a gift. While describing how impossible it would have been for him to enter the apartment undetected, Fry said, "I would have to be a ninja of some sort to move an entire metal bench, put it on a concrete wall, and then climb up to what looked like a plastic or fiberglass balcony, and not break anything and not make a sound. How is that possible?" The prosecution seized on his choice of words. If the idea of entering like a ninja had never occurred to him, if he had never been inside that apartment, why would he describe the precise method investigators believed he had used? On April 4, 2025, after just 1 hour of deliberation, the jury found Trenton Fry guilty of first-degree murder. On August 19, 2025, Judge James Updike Jr. sentenced him to life in prison, exceeding Virginia's sentencing guidelines of 22 to 38 years. "I hereby sentence you to life," the judge said, "because sentencing you to anything less would be less than you justly deserve." He called the murder as cold-blooded and premeditated as any he had ever seen. Fry addressed Katlyn's family briefly at sentencing. "I probably have not felt it on the level that you all have," he said, "but I have felt it, her loss, and I am truly sorry for the loss that you have experienced." Her family found little comfort in his words, but they found purpose. "We make a joke, but it's boots on the ground now," Katlyn's mother Crystal Sell said after the sentencing. "I got laws to change or amend. I got lots to do." Now we come to the question that defines this show. Why? What happened inside Trenton Fry's mind that transformed him from a manipulative boyfriend into a calculated killer? What psychological mechanisms drove him to stalk, surveil, and ultimately murder a woman who had simply chosen to leave him? To understand Fry's intent, we need to examine several interconnected psychological phenomena: the construct of the false self, narcissistic injury and rage, and the specific danger of the post-separation period in intimate partner violence. Trenton Fry presented himself to Katlyn as a successful businessman with multiple companies. This wasn't a minor exaggeration or a white lie told on a first date. It was a comprehensive fabrication, a complete alternate identity designed to attract and secure a partner. In psychological terms, Fry constructed what's known as a false self, an idealized presentation that masks the individual's actual circumstances and often their actual character. This is a hallmark of pathological narcissism. The false self serves a crucial function. It protects the individual from confronting their true situation. In Fry's case, the reality was that he was unemployed, living in his car, driving his mother's vehicle, and lacking the credit or income to qualify for an apartment. The false self, the successful businessman, allowed him to avoid this painful truth while simultaneously attracting a woman he might not have been able to attract otherwise. But here's the critical point. The false self isn't just a lie told to others. It often becomes a lie the individual tells themselves. They become invested in the fabrication. Their self-worth becomes dependent on maintaining the illusion, and when that illusion is threatened, the response can be catastrophic. In early September 2022, Katlyn discovered the truth about Trenton Fry. The businesses didn't exist. The success was imaginary. The man she thought she knew was a fiction. In clinical terms, this moment represents a profound narcissistic injury, a blow to the fragile self-esteem that underlies pathological narcissism. The narcissist experiences the exposure of their false self as an existential threat. It's not simply embarrassing, it feels like annihilation. Research on narcissism and violence consistently shows that the most dangerous moment is precisely this one, when the narcissist's constructed identity is exposed and rejected. The shame is intolerable, the rage is overwhelming, and the target of that rage is inevitably the person who witnessed the exposure, in this case, Katlyn. When rejected, people with a high level of pathological narcissism suffer a narcissistic injury and pursue the other to restore self-esteem, notes research published in psychological literature. Restoring self-esteem may involve expressing displeasure toward the other through vindictive conduct. This pursuit can escalate to stalking, harassment, and ultimately violence. A landmark study published in the American Journal of Psychiatry identified 5 types of stalkers: rejected, intimacy-seeking, incompetent, resentful, and predatory. The most dangerous category, the one most likely to escalate to violence, is the rejected stalker. Rejected stalkers pursue former intimate partners who have ended the relationship. They are characterized by a mixture of revenge and desire for reconciliation. Their behavior vacillates between wanting the person back and wanting to punish them for leaving. Fry's text messages in the days before Katlyn's murder reflect exactly this pattern. On one hand, I'm tearing myself apart. My mental issues are getting out of control, hurting like I never have before. On the other hand, low-life piece of shit. Karma is a bitch. He's simultaneously begging and threatening. He wants her back and wants to destroy her. This ambivalence is characteristic of the rejected stalker, and it's especially dangerous because it means the victim cannot predict which way the stalker will turn. Research shows that stalkers with prior intimate relationships with their victims are significantly more likely to threaten and commit violence than stranger stalkers. The personal history creates a sense of entitlement and ownership that doesn't exist in other stalking scenarios. Fry's tracking of Katlyn's location during their relationship, his constant presence, his apparent jealousy over her new living situation, all suggest he viewed her as something that belonged to him, rather than an independent person with the right to make her own choices. Here's a statistic that every person in an unhealthy relationship needs to understand. According to the Center for Relationship Abuse Awareness, 75% of homicides related to domestic violence occur after separation, not during the relationship, after. This seems counterintuitive. Shouldn't leaving solve the problem? Shouldn't distance create safety? The psychological reality is more complicated. The period immediately preceding or following a breakup is when the risk of homicide is at its highest. This is supported by multiple studies on intimate partner femicide. Why? Because leaving triggers the very narcissistic injury we discussed. It represents a loss of control, and for certain types of abusers, control is everything. The breakup isn't experienced as the end of a relationship. It's experienced as the theft of property, the destruction of identity, and unbearable humiliation that demands response. Research identifies several factors that increase the risk of intimate partner homicide, and Fry's case checks nearly every box. Recent separation, stalking behavior, obsessiveness, access to the victim, prior controlling behavior, and perhaps most significantly, a child from a previous partner living in the home. Studies show that instances in which a child of the victim by a previous partner was living in the home increased the risk of intimate partner femicide. Milani wasn't Fry's daughter. Her presence may have intensified his sense of being an outsider, someone who could be removed and replaced. Defense attorneys often argue that killings in the context of failed relationships are crimes of passion, unplanned, emotional, the result of momentary loss of control. The evidence in Fry's case systematically refutes this characterization. Consider the timeline. He drove from North Carolina to Virginia 3 days before the murder. He spent hours conducting surveillance near her apartment. He was photographed watching her building. He researched floor plans online. He changed into all black clothing at a gas station. He entered her apartment without alerting 3 dogs, a roommate, or a 4-year-old child. He departed and began driving home before anyone discovered the crime. This is not a man who snapped. This is a man who planned. The premeditation is evident in every detail. The reconnaissance, the preparation, the timing, the entry method, the escape route. Fry approached this murder the way one might approach a military operation, with surveillance, planning, and execution. The fact that he searched the breaking news about Katlyn's death before police announced a crime had occurred reveals something profound about his mental state. He wasn't worried she was injured. He wasn't calling to check on her. He was checking to see if his crime had been discovered. One of the most psychologically revealing moments in the trial came when Fry took the stand and described the impossibility of entering Katlyn's apartment undetected. "I would have to be a ninja of some sort," he said. Why choose that word? A ninja is a covert operative, someone who moves in shadows, someone who infiltrates without detection and accomplishes their mission silently. In choosing to describe the entry method using this specific term, Fry revealed an intimate familiarity with exactly what would be required to do what the prosecution alleged he did. More than that, there's an element of pride in the description. He's not saying any killer would have to be incredibly skilled. He's describing a specific set of capabilities he is implicitly claiming he couldn't possess, while simultaneously detailing exactly how one would possess them. This is consistent with what psychologists call duping delight, the satisfaction some individuals derive from deceiving others. Fry had built his relationship with Katlyn on deception. Even on the stand, facing life imprisonment, he couldn't resist the temptation to demonstrate his cleverness. In intimate partner homicides, the killing often represents a final act of control. If I can't have you, no one will. If I can't control whether you're with me, I can control whether you exist at all. Fry's choice of method, strangulation with a charging cord, is significant. Strangulation is an inherently intimate form of killing. It requires proximity, sustained effort, and the victim's full awareness of what is happening. Studies consistently show that strangulation is one of the strongest predictors of intimate partner homicide, and prior non-fatal strangulation is the single greatest indicator that a relationship may end in murder. We don't know whether Fry had strangled Katlyn before, but we do know that he chose a method that allowed him total control over the moment of her death, control over how long it took, when it ended, and what he saw in her final moments. For a man whose entire identity had been exposed as a fabrication, whose victim had seen through his facade and rejected what she found beneath it, there may have been something unbearable about that rejection, and something grimly satisfying about ensuring he was the last thing she ever saw. Katlyn Lyon Montgomery's murder is not unique in its psychology. It is tragically representative of a pattern that claims thousands of lives each year. According to the CDC, about 1 in 5 homicide victims are killed by an intimate partner. More than half of female homicide victims are killed by a current or former male intimate partner. These are not random crimes. They are predictable crimes, predictable to those who know what signs to look for. So what can we learn from Katlyn's case? What warning signs existed? And how might recognition of those signs save lives in the future? When someone you're dating presents a significantly inflated version of themselves, claims of wealth, success, or status that don't match observable reality, this is a red flag. It suggests a person who is comfortable with fundamental dishonesty in their most intimate relationships. Katlyn's friend Hannah noticed that Fry's story didn't add up. He claimed to run multiple businesses, but was always on the couch. The disconnection between his narrative and his behavior was visible to those paying attention. Fry tracked Katlyn's location. During their relationship, she became quieter, more isolated, less likely to go out with friends or attend events she loved. These are textbook signs of coercive control, a pattern of behavior that seeks to dominate a partner through surveillance, isolation, and the erosion of independence. Research consistently shows that coercive control is one of the strongest predictors of intimate partner homicide. When Katlyn ended the relationship, Fry's behavior escalated. The text messages became more frequent, more erratic, more threatening. He alternated between apparent emotional crisis and vindictive rage. This escalation pattern increased contact attempts, oscillation between pleading and threatening, claims of mental health crisis, is characteristic of the rejected stalker. It should be taken seriously as a warning sign of potential violence. I cannot stress this enough. The period during and immediately after leaving an abusive relationship is the most dangerous time for victims. This is when lethality risk peaks. This is when safety planning is most critical. This is not about blaming Katlyn. She did nothing wrong. She had every right to date someone, to believe what they told her, to end the relationship when she discovered the truth, and to move on with her life. But systematically, we can ask, what interventions might have helped? Stalking laws and enforcement vary widely by jurisdiction. Protective orders are often difficult to obtain and difficult to enforce. Many victims don't know they can seek legal protection during the period before violence occurs. Digital surveillance tools, location tracking, online monitoring have made stalking easier than ever before. Yet our legal system has been slow to recognize digital stalking as the serious threat it is. And perhaps most importantly, we need better public education about the danger of the post-separation period. Too often, people believe that leaving ends the threat. In reality, leaving may intensify it. Katlyn's family has committed themselves to advocacy in her memory. Her mother, Crystal Sale, spoke at sentencing about changing laws and raising awareness. The Justice for Katlyn campaign that began on TikTok continues to this day. Her death has given us the fuel to help other victims of domestic violence, said Katlyn's aunt, Tina Hopkins. When first responders arrived at Katlyn's apartment on October 7, 2022, they thought they were responding to a possible overdose. There was no obvious sign of violence, no broken windows, no screaming, just a young mother, unresponsive, with her 4-year-old daughter trying to wake her up. Trenton Fry thought he had committed the perfect crime. He left no DNA. He left no fingerprints. He entered and exited like a ghost. But he couldn't erase the digital trail he left behind. His phone pinging off cell towers, his Bluetooth connecting to her iPad, his Google searches revealing his surveillance, his text messages documenting his rage, his surveillance footage showing him in all black near her apartment. In the end, the technology that had enabled him to stalk Katlyn also proved his guilt. The jury needed only an hour. Katlyn Lyon Montgomery was a dancing queen, a devoted mother, a woman who believed everyone deserves the chance to be happy and live life to the fullest. She spread messages of peace, love, and unity wherever she went. She never met a stranger. The last words she wrote in her journal were, "I am loved." She was, she is, and through her family's advocacy, through her daughter Milani's life, through every person who hears her story and recognizes the warning signs in their own life or someone else's, Katlyn's light continues. If you or someone you know is experiencing intimate partner violence, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or text START to 88788. If you're being stalked, document everything and contact local law enforcement about protective orders. The most dangerous time is during and after leaving. Please plan for safety. Thank you for joining me on Deadly Intent. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe and leave a review. Visit us at carmen-carrion.com and follow Deadly Intent on social media for updates on upcoming episodes. Next time on Deadly Intent, we examine another case where intent illuminates the darkness of human behavior. Until then, remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction. Stay safe, stay curious, and beware the darkness.